Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, and welcome to the weekly vlog. And I'm here with Amanda Leith. Hi, Amanda. Hi. Welcome. So,
Thank you. So
Amanda's
excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. For everyone who doesn't know you, Amanda is a dear friend of mine now, and she is the owner operator of SHiFT Recovery by Acorn. And I can't wait to tell you all about what that means, what SHiFT is, how it serves people. Amanda, I think of you as really a foot soldier on the path here, trying to help people with their food issues in a way that's very similar to how I try to. And I just feel a huge kindred spirithood with you. I'm sure by the end of this interview, everyone will understand why. We first met in England about 6-8 months ago or something like that, and I attended one of your retreats, and it was amazing, and got to see you in action, which was so wonderful. And we have a dear friend in common, Tosca, who has worked for SHiFT for a while. And so, Amanda, you and I, the first thing that we have in common is that we both came to the work we do really honestly. Like we come by it honestly. And so why don't you give everybody the short version of your story? Because how did you end up doing the work that you do in the world with food and recovery?
Thanks, Susan. And again, thank you so much for having me here. I'm honored to be here and part of your Bright Line Eating community. So as you said, I really did come to this work honestly. I food was always a big deal to me. And then kind of in my teenage years, other things became more exciting to me, alcohol, drugs. And so that kind of took off through my teenage years and my early 20s. And then I really cut back on that, and food took off like a vengeance. Food, I think, was definitely my first addiction. And no matter what I tried, I couldn't fix the problem, which I thought the problem was I was overweight. And so I'd say from, 22 to 10 years ago, I just celebrated 10 years, to 10 years ago. So I'm 53 this year. So for 30 years, I did everything I could to deal with my weight problem. I went to doctors and exercise programs and fat camps. And I had weight loss surgery. I had the lap band. I took plenty of medications. Like I really, really worked hard. And all I saw was my weight going up and up and up. And I wasn't one of these people that was a successful dieter. I couldn't, like a lot of people that I work with now, they've lost and gained hundreds and hundreds of pounds. This was not me. I maybe would go on a diet and lose, maybe 20 pounds. That would be amazing. And then that was it, because I just couldn't stick to it. And I remember when I decided to have the lap band put in, I was so excited. I knew this was going to be the answer to my problem. And, it was a lot of money. I'm Canadian and there was no coverage for it. And I got it in. And the first 3 weeks, you can only only have fluids. And I lost 25 pounds. That is the only weight I lost in my whole experience with the lap band.
Oh.
So, and so I was pretty crushed. And, by the time I'm, in my late 30s, I'm over 300 pounds. I have diabetes. I was told I was going to get diabetes and I better get it together. And I just couldn't. I tried. I'm not stupid. I couldn't do it. So
Oh my God, wait. So you are over 300 pounds in your 30s with diabetes. How tall are you, Amanda?
5'4".
5'4", 300 plus pounds with diabetes. Okay, I'm just letting that sink in for a second, because that is like you're gonna die. Like you're facing leg amputation and blindness and heart attack in your 50s, stroke. Like okay. Yeah.
It was,
So
and it was more than that, Susan. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I was now diabetic. I was giving myself needles every day. I had this lap band in. And I was over 300 pounds and I was very depressed. And I functioned though. I got up, I went to work, and I came home. And my life really revolved around food. I was very much like clients I work with, that were in the drug and alcohol addiction field. My life was around eating, then feeling sick, hiding the food. I'm going to do differently today. And I just never could. I never could, no matter what I tried. And then, so I was an addiction counselor and working with drug addicts and alcoholics. And here I was, over 300 pounds. And I heard about what was then called Acorn. I found it online, and my mind had two thoughts when I saw it. One, it was only 5 days, and two, it was relatively inexpensive for what I knew treatment programs cost, right? I knew treatment programs to be 30 plus days and 10, 15, 20, $30,000. Here's me with not a penny to my name, but it was too cheap. It wasn't going to work, and it was too short. So I didn't go. And for a year, I didn't go. And then life happened, and I went there. And I actually was going because they also did a training program for people that wanted to work with food addicts. So that's one of my main reasons to go. Although I learned pretty quickly I was there for me. And I'll tell you, Susan, that for me, I don't think I knew this at the time, but I finally got my proper treatment because I finally was diagnosed with what my problem was. And all along, my symptoms were being treated. I was being treated for obesity. I was being treated for diabetes. I was being treated for depression. I was being treated for high cholesterol, high blood pressure, which were all secondary to my primary disease, which was addiction. I was food addicted. And when I got the proper treatment, the level of treatment I needed for the stage of my food addiction, I got recovery. And as I said a minute ago, that was 10 years ago. It was January 17th, 2015.
Oh my goodness,
And,
just now. Happy 10 years.
Literally. Yeah.
Holy
Thank
smoke
you.
and doodles.
I know
Happy 10 years.
Yeah,
Woo!
thank you. And, I'll just say there's nothing in my life today that was the same 10 years ago. And yes, I've lost, over half my body weight, and I no longer am diabetic, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all of those things, which are amazing. And the far bigger thing for me is, I get to live life. I have freedom in my life. It's not white knuckling, which I'll talk about in a bit. It's just, I really get to be free. I'm not obsessed with food all the time, or my body, or feeling sick. So I just get to live life. Doesn't mean my life is, rainbows and unicorns, but it's a pretty spectacular life. And it's because I got proper treatment for addiction, which involves so much more than just medication and or a food plan.
Yeah.
Which I'm
so
sure
tell us,
about.
Yeah. So tell us about that. So you went to Acorn, and now you're the owner operator of Acorn. So 10 years ago, you went as a patient. So you were thinking, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I need to help my patients with food addiction. You're 300 pounds, and you go there, and it's like a rude awakening. Okay, this is for me. And you get the food in place. You get abstinent. You get bright. You get, you get freedom. And what was your journey then to actually owning Acorn, which is now called SHiFT Recovery by Acorn, and transitioning your whole professional life to serving and helping food addicts?
Yeah. So I knew before I went, because I had talked to the owner at the time, Phil Wardell, and he was like, I think you need to come for your own treatment, which, I didn't much like that, but I was like, okay, off I go. And I was a mess. And I just remember, I'll just say this briefly about my experience there. I remember being there that week, and I had no idea my life was about to change. Even when I was there, this didn't feel like groundbreaking treatment for me. I was just there. Here I go again. Another one of, I don't know how many things I've done in my life. And yeah, I'll follow this food plan here, but as soon as I go out there, there's no way, because I've never followed a diet in my life. But something happened. And I remember leaving there and going back to my home in Vancouver. And I had already been attending 12-step meetings, and I started attending different 12-step food meetings. And it was so much more than a food plan for me. Like, the food was just the smallest part. I had to get physically sober, absolutely, so that I no longer was going to be in the physical part of the disease, the cravings, not white knuckling, not obsessing about food. So I had to do that and get that clean. And then really quickly, I had to work on my mental, emotional, spiritual part of my disease, which is
Yeah.
the far more important part. And that when I say real treatment, that's what I mean. It's treating all of that: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And so that was my journey. I started going down that road. And as I say, I was working with drug addicts and alcoholics at the time. And I kept volunteering at Acorn because I knew I needed to be close to them. So I just kept
Mhm.
showing up, kept being there. And then I started working there part time. I was working at both places part time. And both of them around the same time said, we really need you full time, Amanda. And here was my thought: wow, working with drug addicts and alcoholics is so much easier than food addicts. And I just knew I was called to work with food addicts. That it robbed me of my whole life. I was, however old I was, 42, or maybe by that time I was 44, 45. And I just knew that's where I knew where I was
Yeah.
meant to be, and I think one of the reasons I was so called to it was I had worked so hard and had so many well-meaning professionals try and help me over the years, but were treating me for the wrong disease. And so if I could do anything to help someone else not have to go through that, I was willing to do it.
Yeah.
So I went full time with Acorn, and Acorn is based out of Florida. And as I said, I'm Canadian, so I would trek back and forth. We were doing programs in Vancouver and Florida. And then the owners at the time, Phil and Mary, who had owned it for over 30 years, Acorn's been around. This food addiction treatment program has been around for 32 years. And they were getting ready to retire. And it just kind of all happened. It was just right, And so I started running the company. And then I was going to say they fully retired, but they didn't. They stayed working for me. So I purchased the company coming up 6 years ago. In March 4th, it'll be 6 years ago. And Phil and Mary stayed working for a while, and they're both retired. Phil's passed now, but Mary's retired. So yeah, so I own the company now, and
Beautiful.
it
Yeah.
is amazing. It's amazing.
So you've told me that you think, and I think you think this is maybe a bone of contention between us, or maybe a milder way to put it is just like something we see a little differently. And I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but you've told me that you think that you and I, serve different people fundamentally. That the
Mm.
people who are successful with Bright Line Eating are not the same people who are successful with SHiFT Recovery by Acorn. Am I right about that? And what do you mean by that? Because this is a Bright Line Eating vlog or podcast, right? And I've got an audience of people who have been listening to me talk about Bright Line Eating. What do you think is different about about what you offer, and who would need it who maybe isn't being served by Bright Line Eating?
Yeah. So I think, Susan, that we serve food addicts. We serve people that are dependent on food. And I think SIP serves the much smaller group of people that are further along in their disease. They're later stage addicts that need more support. And I thought that for a while. And then in the last year or so, we've had a fair amount of Bright Line Eaters come, and that theory is coming true. When I sit with them, when I talk to them, when they're in our program, it's just a level of support that many, many addicts need. That's completely normal in drug addiction and alcohol addiction, but not in food addiction yet. They need intense support. And then I think our programs offer, we talk the same language. We're doing the same things.
Yeah.
We're treating the whole person: physical, mental, social, spiritual. Ours is just a little bit more intense, more hands-on, more supportive. So
Yeah.
it's for my thought is that our program is for the people that have really given Bright Line Eating a go, and they still are struggling, or they can follow the food plan, but they're still in food obsession, or they're white knuckling. And I mean, they've really followed your program, because if they've just gone in and followed your food plan, that is not treatment for food addiction. And I know that's not what you promote, right? So
Yeah.
we have to do all of it to be free. And we're going for freedom. We're not going for white knuckling and obsession, right? So if they've tried all of it and really can't stay bright, in your words, abstinent in our words, then there's a good possibility that another level of support could really help them. And we're definitely a much smaller group than the amount of people you can serve. And I think there's a lot of us out there that don't even know that this exists. Or, they don't want to spend the money or, that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, we just had someone this last week from Bright Line Eating, and we had 3 people, I think. And one of them was just like, oh my gosh, I've given Bright Line Eating everything I've had for the last 9 years. I think she said, was it
Yeah.
9? Anyway, it was a while. And,
Yeah.
long enough. She
enough.
said, long enough. Yeah. And she was like, and this is what I needed. I needed
Yeah.
this level of support, and I had no idea.
Yeah. I think I did a vlog just recently on how food addiction is progressive, right? So you would be treating later stage food addicts. And sometimes people do need a deeper level of support, just more intensive, more intensive. And your food plan is a little different than ours as well. Bright Line Eating's adaptable. There's, everything you do is bright. It's a 4 meal a day plan, which is really helpful for people who have a lot of binging issues. And Dr. Joy Jacobs has worked with our people who are struggling with binging to adopt a 4 or even sometimes 5 meal a day plan. There's some other things that you've worked into your food plan that I admire that we haven't worked in yet, which I think are amazing. I don't know if you know our food plan well enough to know what those differences are. Do you want me to speak to them, or do you feel like you know some of them?
I know some of them, but I don't know all of them. But I know some of them. So I can tell you what I think I know, and then you let me know. So we are also a 4 meal a day weighed and measured food plan,
Yeah.
sugar free, artificial sweetener free. So I think so far we're the same.
Yeah.
And then we
And
are
flour
also
free.
and flour,
Yeah.
absolutely flour free, sugar free, weighed and measured. And then if anyone has personal binge foods,
Personal
and 4
binge foods.
meals a day, and 4
Yep.
meals a day. So we are also caffeine free, it's very interesting. And I will say this, I know many food addicts that drink caffeine and they're fine. So I want to be really clear about that. What we realized, so this food plan, I will say, was created. I'll just briefly say SHiFT or Acorn came out of Glen Bay Psychiatric Hospital in the 80s, had a food addiction wing. And this food plan was created by their dietitians specifically for recovering food addicts. This food plan has been around for almost 40 years. We've had some tweaks as science has changed. And caffeine was on the plan. So were artificial sweeteners in the beginning. And they've both been gone for about 10 years, no, maybe 12 years. And what came up with caffeine is that it can elicit cravings in people. And so what we really have tried to do is take everything out of a plan that's a possibility of a craving. And we say to people, at least do this with no changes for a year. At least do this with no changes for a year. Give yourself the best possible outcome. So we have no caffeine. The other thing is that there are certain textures of food that can really trigger the binge response in food addicts. And that is crunchy and smooth and salty. Crunchy, smooth, and salty. So salty, crunchy, sweet and smooth. So like rice cakes, peanut butter. We take those things out.
Crackers.
And again, it's just crackers,
flour-free crackers. Yeah.
Any of those kind of things, because there was enough evidence over the years that when you're food addicted, these were eliciting the binge response in food addicts. So we just took them out. And we really suggest people to follow it for at least a year. And, it's really helpful for a lot of people. I was so grateful that I had those things.
Yeah.
And people can change. I can change my food plan. Then we can, see where we fit. So those, I think, are the main differences. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I think you're no nuts and no cheese too, right?
Uh-huh. We are. That's right. So no nuts is the same thing. It's that crunchy, snacky binge response. So the nuts go with the salty crunchy, and the cheese, same thing. We had a lot of people come in and their binge food is cheese to come in with. So even though they're weighing and measuring it, a lot of people were relapsing on cheese. So that was taken out. Like, I think, from what I understand, I wasn't around then, but I think cheese was on the plan for like a year and it got taken out. They can have feta cheese, um,
Oh,
but
interesting.
yeah, they can have feta cheese, and but
And
no other cheeses.
what about seeds? Like hemp seed, flax seed, chia seed?
No nuts and seeds are on the plan
Okay.
at all. And there are some things that I think, as the world has changed and science has changed, so things
Mhm.
like that, I'm like, it could be. And Susan, you know what I just realized, and I say this to people, is that this is a healthy food plan. And this is a plan that for over 40 years has helped thousands of people. And so just surrender and put your stuff down. Well, extra
Mhm.
surrendering will do well for us in years to come.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that's our food plan.
Love it.
And people at first are like, oh my God. And it's a lot of food. People are like, there's too much food on it. And then people love our food plan. I think we
Yeah.
also have more fruit. Not I think, I know we have more fruit than you. Um,
And more grain, more fruit
and
and
more
more
grain
grain.
and more
Yep.
grain. And those are two things that can be very controversial. And
Hmm.
one day they might change. And for now, I just see it working for people over and over and over. And of course, if someone has major medical issues and we need to make personal changes, we will. Otherwise, that's a food plan.
Yeah. Love it, Amanda. Love it. And so describe what you offer. Like mainly it's retreats, right? And then there's follow-up care. I know you have one coming up, right? You've got a retreat coming up soon, as this vlog is going to be released in late January 2025. You've got one coming up. How often do you offer them? Virtual, in person? How long is the follow-up? Like, what do you offer?
Yeah, so our kind of mothership program, it's called an intensive, and it's changed a bit over the years, but it's really the solid foundation of it has stayed the same. So it's a residential or virtual. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's a residential 8-day program in Florida. And it is in that first week, people are getting physically abstinent. So sometimes there's detox going on, withdrawals. And then we're giving them kind of some basics of food addiction, as well as we start introducing them to other parts of treatment, like mental. We do counseling from many different modalities. We bring in IFS, we bring in somatic. We have lots of different areas that we bring in. We start bringing in different 12-step work, and we talk about the powerlessness and really what's going on for people. So it's an intense first week made up of groups and writing time and their meals. And then the intensives are followed by a 10-week aftercare program. And the aftercare is every week for 10 weeks, you meet as a group on Zoom for 3 hours. You have a one-on-one session with a counselor, and you do a daily email check-in that is responded to from one of the counselors. And that program has been around since the beginning. It used to be 5 days with no aftercare. So when I took the program, it was 5 days and no aftercare. That's what I had. And now this is what we've changed it to. So 8 days, 10 weeks of aftercare. And then during COVID, we got shut down and we were weeks away from an intensive. We're like, should we try this virtual? Which I was not a fan of. I was like, this is not going to work. And we did it. And it's been amazing. And so we now offer that. And so far now we haven't had, we're not as many years away for the data, but we don't see a difference with long-term recovery. There's things I love about in person. I still think in person is better, but in terms of data, there's nothing. And it allows people that don't want to fly. They don't have to pay for the flight. So that's our main program. Yeah, we have them 6 times a year. We just finished the virtual. Our next in person is in March, coming up in March. It is March 19th in Florida. And then we have 4 more throughout the year. All those dates are on our website. And then we have a lot of programs for our alumni, because this is not a one and done deal. We're changing our life. We're really buying ourselves a new life. We're recovering ourselves so we get to live a new life. And so, especially in the first 2 years, there's been a lot of science to prove that in the first 2 years, addicts need a ton of support. And I think food addicts need more support than drug addicts and alcoholics, because we're continuing to eat. So Um, we have the aftercare, and then there's another program that's called the practice, which it goes for 6 weeks. These are all virtual, which is just 6 weeks practicing how we live in recovery, practicing how we live in recovery. And then we do 3 different, we call them emotional sobriety, 6-week courses online. And they cover relapse prevention, addictive thinking, and codependency. And then we have like 3-day weekends for alumni. They'll come together, and they're amazing. People just come and do deep process work. And we also have coaching. You can have coaching, and you can have counseling. So those are kind of our not main, those are our programs. And they're pretty amazing. And the SHiFT community, like your Bright Line Eating community, is very, very tight. We have free, 4 times a week, there's free calls. Anyone can join in, just if they want to get to know the SHiFT community and who we are. You can join in on those. And we also do 2 12-step meetings a month that are also free that anyone can join.
Great. And so the 10 weeks of aftercare then leaves people as alumni, and could they also do Bright Line Eating at the same time at that point? Or do people go to 12-step programs at that point? Or what are your or do they just stay SHiFT alumni and they get all their needs met as SHiFT alumni through your ongoing aftercare meetings, or what?
I hope it's just not SHiFT. We need a lot of support, so absolutely 12-step meetings. To me, the 12-step fellowships are far more important than SHiFT ever will be. It's all over the world. It's for life. So we really want them to, broaden. And absolutely, so many of the tools that I've witnessed, that you have at Bright Line Eating, and I know Bright Line Eating has a 12-step meeting. They can absolutely use. It's kind of like whatever works, whatever works. And so even when now that we've had more Bright Line Eating people, we'll talk about Bright Line Eating in there and the tools and what they need. And so absolutely they can stay with their buddies in Bright Line, attend the meetings, any way that they can get support to have long-term food addiction freedom. We support that. And I just think what Bright Line Eating has is, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's such a big community.
So last question, Amanda. You and I have been kind of sisters watching the food addiction landscape worldwide kind of morph and shift and open up. And I don't know if explode is the right word, but certainly there's a transformation happening globally around food addiction. What excites you most about that? Like, what do you see happening? And what excites you most?
Yeah. Well, for me, Susan, it's so personal. And I kind of touched on this early that, I worked so hard. I almost want to cry when I say it. I worked so hard for so many years to get better. And there was no help for me. People were trying to give me help the best they knew how, but it wasn't helping. I was only getting worse. So what I love is that as the world of food addiction opens up, more and more and more people are hearing that, food addiction is actually real and there's treatment for it. And so what I feel excited about is the medical world getting into that, and just the general population, so that if people are out there in the world wandering around in this deep shame, there's this, wait a second, there's this food addiction thing going on. Let me see. Is that me? Am I a possibility? That's all I want. My dream would be that when you go to your doctors and they do your yearly check-in and everything, that if someone's struggling with weight, overweight, underweight, or, diabetes or high blood pressure, that there's a possibility that food addiction is present, so that they can get screened. So then we can give them the proper treatment. That would be my dream, that it's just there. It's just there.
Yeah. I love it. I'm with you in that. I see that, and I'm with you in that. Amanda, so good to talk with you. Thank you so much for being on the weekly vlog. We're going to put a link down below this video so people can access your website, check out your intensives, and you're just a delight and a love. And if there's ever anything I can do to support you, you just call. It's so sweet to be with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you so much. So grateful to be here.
All right. That's the weekly vlog, everyone. I'll see you next week.